all your fault. Everybody just draw your attention over here, his fault. This guy's dead. That's what they're saying. Lord, if you would have been here, where were you? Have you ever made that claim to Jesus in a statement? I have. Lord, if you would have been there, my son wouldn't have died. If you would have been there, he wouldn't have fallen in that pool. If you would have been there, he wouldn't have struggled for his last breath. See, I've dealt with my own trauma, my own questions, my own blame hurled upon the one who came to save. The one who had the solution for my life the entire time. I did not meet him with congratulations. Thank you for coming. I met him with, how dare you? And where were you when I needed you most? But I don't have the whole picture. And I don't know the end of the story, but he does. The title of today's message is Grave Clothes, and we are in our Rabbi series as we look at the miracles, life events, and teachings of the Rabbi, the greatest teacher of all time, Emmanuel, God with us. And we looked at what it looks like to be a student of the Rabbi, to want to be like the Rabbi, to be called by the Rabbi, and then to follow him in his footsteps in the dust of the Rabbi, to emulate his teachings, to practice his teachings, to ultimately be like the Rabbi, which is Jesus. And so we're going to talk today from John chapter 11. And this passage of Scripture, John chapter 11, really that whole chapter 1 through 44, is going to talk about this resurrection of Lazarus. It's the greatest event besides the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus' ministry career on earth. Up until this point, it is his greatest miracle as perceived by the people. Up until this point, he has healed and resurrected two individuals. One was a little girl who was on the verge of death, dies, and then he resurrects her soon after. Now, a situation like that could easily provide doubt and questioning. If someone were to be healed and in the grave for 4 days versus someone died and came back to life, so is there a difference there? Matter of fact, in 72 hours, the major things happen in the body. The fluids begin to pool in low places, and your heart stops pumping, and your body begins to decompose. Things begin to turn to liquid. So it's one thing for someone to have coded on the table and come back, or Jesus to step into a situation and raise somebody after they had immediately died. But it's a whole nother thing for someone to be dead for 4 days and in the grave. Like, there is no small tweaking of things to bring things back. There are no paddles with enough electrical force to bring Lazarus back. There is no heart surgeon skilled enough to take that mushy heart that's disintegrating and reform it. Do you see the miracle that takes place here with Lazarus? Matter of fact, we looked at this in John chapter 12 in a previous chapel. And I want to read that to you. John chapter 12, verse 9. To understand the gravity of this miracle and what it means in the life and ministry of Jesus. Now, we talked about the triumphal entry with Jesus in the temple, and we looked at this point, but I want to reemphasize it here. Chapter 12, verse 9. Now, a large crowd of Judeans learned that Jesus was there. This is speaking in Jerusalem. The triumphal entry is about to happen. Jesus was there, and so they came not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. Now verse 10 is very telling. So the chief priests planned to kill Lazarus too. For on account of him, many of the Jewish people from Jerusalem were going away and believing in Jesus. Do you understand the gravity of the miracle of the resurrection of Lazarus? This is the triumphal entry of Emmanuel, God with us. All eyes on Jesus. But some are there not only for Jesus' sake, but to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. That's the gravity of this miracle. And so much so that these chief priests that ultimately killed Jesus, we looked at them, how they lived, their lavish lives. They're getting fat off of the back of Roman occupation. And so they then in turn say, we need to kill Lazarus too. You often hear of the plot to kill Jesus, but you seldomly hear of the plot to kill Lazarus. But they're talking about it behind closed doors because a man who was dead for 4 days is walking around. And they want to shut him up. Like, what can we do? I mean, how far off do you have to be so frustrated and angry because someone was raised from the dead that you in turn want to kill them again? That is rough, man. That's some tough stuff. Like, you want to kill him? You want to silence him? This miraculous work. We know that at other times they blame Jesus, saying that he did these things by the power of Satan because they couldn't explain it. Only God can forgive sins. Only God can raise the dead. Only God can do these things. So they in turn say, well, he's preaching against us, therefore, we might as well silence his miracles. Silence him. Silence Lazarus. Well, that's what we need to understand before we look at the raising of Lazarus, is how important this event is. You don't come back after being dead for 4 days. Now, Bethany is only 2 miles from Jerusalem. Now, you need to understand the geography of this area. So there's Jerusalem, there's the Kidron Valley, there's the Mount of Olives. We talked about that. You can just walk right across the Kidron Valley and be in temple teaching in a matter of minutes. You go up the Mount of Olives, and on the backside of the Mount of Olives, there's a town called Bethany. It's on the road to Jericho. Jesus travels this road back and forth. Pilgrims travel this road back and forth. This is a main vein and artery for the city of Jerusalem and incoming pilgrims. So everybody, the majority of people, at least if they're coming from the east and even up from the north of Israel, they're going to go through that area. And there's this massive movement of people, and I'm sure there are people out trying to sell trinkets and wares and talking about their day and about temple and Passover and what's going on. But then there's another whisper in the crowd. Did you hear about Jesus? Yeah, I've heard about Jesus. I heard he heals the blind, and I heard he rebukes the religious elite and calls them out for their hypocrisy. No. Did you hear about the guy he raised from the dead? Lazarus. Who? Lazarus. Martha and Mary's brother? Yeah, him. There's the whispers going around. So much so that this crowd has been infiltrated with the knowledge that Lazarus has raised from the dead. So much so that they're all talking about it and they're clamoring to see Jesus. But not only Jesus, they're tapping their brother on the shoulder and saying, is that him next to him? Yeah, that's Lazarus. That's him. He was dead how many days? You can't explain that miracle away. Oh, people try. Maybe it was a big conspiracy and he just went in a cave for, 4 days and deceived multiple witnesses. I mean, they'll tell you that about Jesus and his resurrection. It's called the Swoon Theory. Many cults believe it, that he just swooned on the cross. He just fainted. That he just fainted on the cross and then woke up the next day and just, with his weakened body, just rolled the tomb away himself and just crawled out of the grave. That's not what the Gospels say, and it doesn't make any sense, honestly. So here we are, chapter 11 of John, and we're going to look at the raising of Lazarus. I'm going to take my time with this, and if I've got to do this in 2 parts, then I will. We'll see how it goes. Now, a certain man named Lazarus, now you know who he is. He was sick. He's not dead yet. He was from Bethany. You know where Bethany is. The village where Martha and Mary, his sisters, lived. Now it was Martha who anointed the Lord with perfumed oil. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with perfume oil and wiped his feet dry with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sister sent a message to Jesus. Lord, look, the one you love is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, this sickness will not lead to death, but to God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Let me read you verse 6. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he remained in the place where he was for 2 more days. So what we need to realize first of all are these characters. We have the geography. We know where we're at. We know who Mary is. She's broken the alabaster box and anointed Jesus' feet with fragrant perfume, this great value and this great worship act that happens. We also know who Martha is. There's a scenario where Jesus shows up at Martha and Mary's house, and they're hanging out, and Martha's busy. She's preparing her house, making sure it's perfect for Jesus' visit. She's scurrying all over. She's all worried, making sure her doilies are correct. I don't know if they had doilies, but whatever the equivalent of first century Jewish women doilies are, she had them. She's decorating. She's making sure everything's all right. The food's the right temperature. She's serving. She's trying to. And then Mary is just over there just at Jesus' feet, just worshiping. And Martha's just stewing. She walks by again. Mary's still there. Table needs to be set. Bread needs to come out of the oven. And Mary is over there just worshiping away. How dare she? So Martha gets upset. And she actually goes to Jesus and says, Jesus, I'm doing all the work around here. We need Martha to lend a hand. And Jesus rebukes her subtly and says, Martha, Mary has chose the better work here. The thing that's most important, which is the anointing of my body for burial. So here's these two. So now you know who Martha is. She's busy. She works her tail off. She wants to please through service. And then there's Mary, who wants to please through her heart, who feels deeply, who hurts deeply. And you're going to see that in this story as they deal with the loss of their brother. You have Mary, you have Martha, you have Jesus, you have Lazarus, you have the religious elite, you have the geography. We've got all of these bearings now to know where we're at in this story. So now let's move on to... We'll start in verse 7. Well, first of all, I want you to realize verse 6. So it says that he loved Lazarus deeply. He hears that he's sick. We know he loves him deeply. And when he hears that he's sick, what does he do? It's 2 miles away. 2 miles. He could be there in minutes. Running. 2 miles. He stays where he's at. That's what it says. He loves them deeply, and Lazarus is sick, and he stays where he is. That doesn't seem like the right response to, your brother's sick and you love him. The right response seems like, drop everything and run to him because he's going to die if you don't show up, Jesus. Well, that's where we're at. Verse 7. Then after this, he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. Let me surmise this for time's sake, really going into verse 14. What's happening here is Jesus is going to go back into this area where his life has already been threatened. He's escaped. He's had many close occasions. Once where they picked up stones to stone him and he escaped through the crowd. I mean, Jesus is constantly moving about and escaping their plot to destroy him. So what's happening there in those few passages is one of the disciples, Thomas Didymus, says this. He says, Lord, but they're going to kill you. And Jesus says, that's what I've got to do. That's where I'm going. And so then Thomas says, well, let's go with him. Disciples, let's go with him and we'll die with him. They know the danger they're walking into in Jerusalem and outer lying areas. And so that's what's happening in that. But now let's skip forward. For time's sake, we're going to be in, let's see here. Let me start in verse 11. After he said this, he added. So he just said all that to Thomas Didymus. He's letting him know. And they're willing to suffer with him. After he said this, he added, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. But I am going that I may wake him up. Verse 12, then the disciples replied, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had been talking about his death, but they thought he had been talking about real sleep. No, Jesus is talking about a dirt nap, not a little siesta. Verse 14, then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died. He knows when it happens. Lazarus is dead. And I'm glad. What? A man's dead. You didn't rush to help him. He's your friend. Supposedly you love him deeply. You didn't show up. And now he acknowledges the moment of his death. And I am glad. Why is he glad? For your sakes, that I was not there, so that you may believe. So something is going to transpire here that's going to cause belief to rise up in the hearts of the disciples. And Jesus is glad because of it, even if it means a man has died. He's glad for their sakes. That I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. This is when Thomas says to his fellow disciples, let us go so that we may die with him. They're ready, man. Let's read verse 17. Before I do that, let me just pause here for a moment and talk about God's timing. Your heartfelt cry. We have a lot of valid concerns and issues, marriages that need restored and future employment and restoration among siblings and families. And there are so many important things that are happening in our lives in this ministry. But if we're not careful, we'll mistake God's waiting for a lack of love. If we're not careful, we'll mistake his waiting for not caring. But that's not the case here. It is acknowledged he loves Lazarus deeply. He knows this family deeply. But he knows the big picture of what's going to happen here. And he knows that ultimately people are going to be clamoring to see Lazarus on the Triumphal Entry. He knows the big picture of what's important here. So in God's waiting, be careful with your questioning. When your answer to prayer is unheard, he's unresponsive, he still loves you. His concern is for you. His eyes are on the big picture. They have always been. He sees your beginning and he sees your end. Do you trust him? Because when you ask him for something and he doesn't do it, that's when the real question is answered. Do you trust him? No, do you really trust him? Like a father who's concerned for his child and knows the end and knows that the end of this road leads to something negative, that father is going to plead with that son not to go down that road, and he knows the end of that road, even though the son pleads with him, but Daddy, you love me. You care for me. Yeah, that's why I don't want you to go that way. In God's waiting, be careful of blaming him. If anything, you should thank him for the things you don't know.
That's good.
How many times has he saved your life? How many times has he just put his finger on it and said, just not yet, not yet. Not today, Satan. I got a plan for his life. In the waiting, be careful where you put the blame. In the waiting, if he's not answering for a reason.
That's right.
Possibly because you don't need it, the thing you're asking for. Secondly, because humanity's involved, and wives have hurt feelings, and families have hurt feelings, and there needs to be time transpire in order for these feelings and wounds to heal. There's humanity involved. We're not going to put that on God. There are unforgiving people in this life. And it takes time to recultivate those things. Men with wives, let me just give you a little nugget here as a man who's been married for 25 years. In this ministry, be careful when you're on your phone with your wife. You know, it's good to be excited. But we sometimes take snapshots of our time at Teen Challenge, you know, like, and we went to Winter Jam tonight, man, so-and-so played, and then we went and got pizza, and we came back home, and it was such a good night. She's like, man, I worked all day and changed diapers. Son of a, you out going to concerts? Well, wait a minute. I did mow Rogers Lane today and get hit in the lip with a rock. I mean, you get what I'm saying. There needs to be some balance to our communication with our better halves to bring them along to to be careful with our words, careful with our manipulation, to give them time because they haven't had 13 months to go to class every day and chapel every morning and be soaked in worship. So we in turn show mercy toward those. So there is humanity involved here too that we have to be aware of. Now let's move on. Verse 17. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus has been dead in the tomb 4 days. It's taken Jesus 4 days. It's 2 miles. How far can you travel in 4 days? 2 miles. Nothing. No word from Jesus. Out of sight, out of mind. We called for Jesus. He left. Now Lazarus is dead. All hope is lost. It's over. The stone's been rolled, and he's been inside for 4 days. Major decomposition happens in 72 hours. It's over. There is no bringing that heart back, that body back as it begins to decompose inside of that grave. The Jewish people didn't practice any type of elaborate burial practice like the Egyptians. There was no embalming. There were none of those things. There was a niche, which is a table you put a body on. The body sits inside of that side of that tomb. It bakes as the sun reaches a certain temperature. The body decomposes. Later, you go into the tomb, roll away the stone. You take the ashes and the bones, and you put them in an ossuary. An ossuary is a bone box. You find them throughout the Holy Land. There are many bodies buried in tiny little boxes called ossuaries that are inside of tombs. This is the burial process. He's in the decomposing state at this point. 4 days. It's over. Verse 18. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from. Why does it say that right there after it said it took him 4 days to get there? It's trying to prove a point. It's like, and by the way, it's only less than 2 miles. 4 days. The Bible wants us to stop here for a minute and say, what are you doing, Jesus? Now you show up? Where you been? He's dead. It's gone. Some of you guys need to wait for some things to die in your life. Old relationships. You know, we talked about it as we talked about sacrifice, the true letting go of things, the true letting go of Isaac, the true placing him on the altar, and the willingness not to receive him back if that's what God so chooses. That God is enough through it all. He remains where he is for 4 more days, 2 miles away. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. So many of the Jewish people of the region had come to Martha and Mary to console them over the loss of their brothers. There's a massive crowd here. It's on the way. It's a pilgrim's journey from Jericho. It's just 2 miles less than from Jerusalem. This is a prominent hub that people are walking through in pilgrimage. So many of the Jewish people of the region had come to Martha and Mary to console them over the loss of their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, remember who Martha is? She's the doer. Surprise, surprise, Martha's the one that runs to Jesus. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to him. But Mary was sitting in the house. Martha said to Jesus, this is her greeting to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. He's thinking the same thing we're thinking. She's thinking the same thing we're thinking. If you would have just came, you wouldn't have died. It's your fault. Have you ever been welcomed to a funeral like that? Welcome. This right here, all your fault. Everybody just draw your attention over here. His fault. This guy's dead. That's what they're saying. Lord, if you would have been here, where were you? Have you ever made that claim to Jesus in a statement? I have. Lord, if you would have been there, my son wouldn't have died. If you would have been there, he wouldn't have fallen in that pool. If you would have been there, he wouldn't have struggled for his last breath. See, I've dealt with my own trauma, my own questions, my own blame hurled upon the one who came to save. the one who had the solution for my life the entire time. I did not meet him with congratulations. Thank you for coming. I met him with, how dare you? And where were you when I needed you most? But I don't have the whole picture. And I don't know the end of the story, but he does. You see, we've all had those moments. I don't know what it is for you in your life. You can put your finger on that. The Holy Spirit can this morning as the word is preached. What is it in your life that you hold animosity toward the Creator over? Is it the fairness of life? Is it the death of a child? Is it the death of a parent? Is it abuse you encountered when you were younger? I don't know what it is. You know it. And the Holy Spirit knows it. And just because he didn't answer doesn't mean he doesn't have your best intention at heart. Just because you didn't think he did what he's supposed to do. So here I am, a man who's lost his son, hurling accusations at God, blaming him for everything, while the entire time he's the answer for all of it. He's the resurrection and the life. He's the only way we have life outside of this world. And yet I'm blaming him? The one who supplies life? That's where we get in our blaming and our doubts. And Martha's no different. Martha's a doer, man. And doers, they want you to reciprocate. They want you to do as well. I'm a doer. I get nervous energy. I'm always wanting to do something. If everybody's just sitting around talking, I want something to like fiddle with. It's just I'm a doer. I want to be doing something. I feel awkward in big crowds and sitting around and hamming it up and talking to people and shaking hands and asking them where they work and what they do for a living. It's just, that's not me. And I can easily see me embossed in this story. So let's move on. Let's look at, so we've looked at frustration and blame and where that comes from. Martha is a doer. She's done, and Jesus did not do. Make sense? I'm a doer, and my wife is not a doer. I'm always busy working, and I many times in a wrong way try to impose my work ethic on her. Like, if I do this, she should do this. There are things called love languages, and we all receive and give love in different ways, and some do it through acts of service, and some through physical touch, and some through words of affirmation, and so there's different ways that people give and receive love. Well, the way I give love is by doing. I'll make you a spice rack. I'll mow the yard. Do you see me out here mowing? This is for you. This is for the family. I'm going to work for the family. I'm doing this is love. Do you feel it? You feel the love? She's like, no, I don't. I'm going to need a romantic evening, some kind words, and the rest is history. So Martha's a doer. She runs out. She's done. She's supplied a party for Jesus. She sure went out of her way to do. And Jesus takes 4 days to get there when he's 2 miles away. So how does she answer? The way I would think anybody would answer. Where were you? And if you would have been here, he wouldn't have died. Whew. Let's move on. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to him, but Mary remained in the house. Why is Mary in the house? Obviously, they both know Jesus is there. Because she's a giver. She's a lover. She is she's different than Martha. They're very opposites. She loves deeply and she's the one that's at Jesus' feet, washing his feet with this perfumed oil in this valuable alabaster box. She's just pouring it out. She just wants to know, I love you. She's one that shows her love in touch and in words of affirmation, and she's pouring it out. Well, now she stays in the house. Why does she stay in the house? Martha's a doer. She gets up and runs to Jesus. Mary's still there because she's hurt deeply. And you're about to see why as she repeats some of those same things that's being spoken. If you would have been here. Let's move to verse 23. Jesus replied, your brother will come back to life again. Okay. Martha said, I know that he will come back to life again. So she believes in the resurrection in the last day. Verse 25, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even if he dies, and the one who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She replied, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who comes into the world." So Jesus now is going to be revealing his big plan. He lets her know, your brother will rise again. And so she says, just like many Jews, some believe in the resurrection, some do not. Pharisees and the Sadducees have a different view on the resurrection. She believes in the resurrection. She has right doctrine concerning the resurrection. There will be a resurrection of evil and good. The evil for judgment, the good for glory. This is from Christ's words himself in a previous passage. So Mary is staying back. Verse 28, and when he had said this, Martha went and called her sister, Mary, saying privately, "The teacher is here, and he's asking for you." Did Jesus ask for her? I didn't read it. I think that Martha was a doer trying to make this all better. Some speculation there. Like, Jesus, he wants to talk to you. That's what she wanted to hear, even though I don't think Jesus said it. She's stewing at the house. She loves deeply and she hurts deeply. She's back there at the house, stewing, and all she wanted to hear was, "The master wants to see you." But she hadn't gotten up so far. Why? So when Mary heard that, she got up quickly. Why so quickly now? You've been sitting there stewing in the house while Martha's off talking to Jesus and you're back at the house. I don't know what's going through her head. How dare he? I loved him. I poured all my affection on him. I believe he's the Christ, but yet he didn't come through when we needed him most. She waits. But when she hears that Martha says, "Hey, the teacher wants to talk to you," she perks up and quickly she gets up and she goes to him. Verse 30, now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still in the place where Martha had come out to meet him. Then the people who were with Mary in the house, consoling her, saw her get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to the place where Jesus was and saw him, what did she do? She fell at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." We see the heart of Mary, the worshipful heart of Mary, quickly arise after hearing Jesus is calling her, fall at his feet where she was accustomed to being, worshiping the Savior, where she was commended by Jesus for being in previous passages. And so she falls at his feet and she weeps, but what is she saying? If you would have been here. There's something called talking points. And if you'll listen, if you're a listener, you'll hear talking points throughout the day. You'll hear them from the Democratic Party. You'll hear them from the Republican Party. You'll hear it from people. These talking points. I hear it at Teen Challenge sometimes. Like if I hear a whisper about something, I know it's being talked about because I've heard it from 3 other people. If you're disgruntled and you don't like this place and you've told 6 people, those are the talking points. And those 6 people have told 6 people. And those 6 people have told 6 people. And this infiltrates, this poisonous talking points where I call, and James says, are set on fire by hell. Talking about the source of an unruly tongue that just speaks and says things with no mind of God's word and Scripture. So Martha runs, tells Mary. Mary runs back to him, falls at his feet, and the talking points are this: if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. Let me see if I need to read any more there. Let's do... Let's see, verse 33. When Jesus saw her weeping, this is Mary, and the people who had come with her weeping, he was intensely moved in the Spirit. Moved in the Spirit would have been enough wording, but intensely moved in the spirit and greatly distressed. Other translations say troubled. There's this unsteadiness in his heart. And now two people have just unlaid all of their blame on the solution himself. It's your fault. Martha says it. Mary says it. They had been talking about it at the house. That's the talking points. They're both saying the same thing. What does that mean? They had been talking about it. And not only them, but you'll find, as we keep reading verse 34, and he asked, "Where have you laid him?" They replied, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept, the smallest verse in the entire Bible. You want to memorize the scripture today? Right there. John chapter 11, verse 35. Jesus wept. Thus the people who had come to mourn said, "Look how much he loved him." Now listen to this. Here's the talking points. But some of them said, "This is the man who caused the blind to see. Couldn't he have done something to keep Lazarus from dying?" Number 3. All saying the same thing. It's your fault. Welcome to the funeral. You're late. It's your fault. Where were you? Mary does it through weeping at his feet. Just weeping. God, if you would have been here, I just pouring it out. Martha does it standing and having a conversation with him. The Jewish onlookers are whispering among themselves, "Man, this guy, he healed the blind. Could he have not come and gotten here quicker and healed Lazarus and we wouldn't be in this predicament?" Everyone at the funeral saying the same thing. Do you think they had been talking about it previously? Possibly? Yes. If we hear 7 different individuals say that you're talking about something, you're probably talking about that thing. It's talking points. Well, the talking points in this scenario, in this funeral, is Jesus, it's your fault. Whew. Let's read the end of this story. So Jesus has this back and forth where he explains to Martha, he says, "But I am the resurrection. Your brother will rise." So she speaks of eschatology and end time events. I know there's a resurrection and he will raise at the end time. But Jesus says, "No, I am the resurrection." You know that thing you've been studying at the end time when the trumpet will sound and the dead in Christ will rise and then the rest will be raised to be caught up for judgment or glory? You know, that moment. You see where that's going? But they blame. They throw hurl and accusations. Meanwhile, the very source of the resurrection, the very source of the end-time resurrection is standing in front of them. I am. He uses this I am statement. The tetragrammaton of the name of God. The I am. I am. Is right there. And she's arguing with him because he didn't show up in time. The resurrection has shown up. He's there in the room. The power that invokes the resurrection is there. He's in the grave. Let's put this together. Think of all people, Mary or Martha would step back for a minute and say, "Okay, let's make a plan. Let's make this happen. You are the resurrection. He's dead. Right? Let's put these two together." But she doesn't. She wants to believe, but she's grappling with it. He's been dead for 4 days. Now let's read the end of the story. Jesus intensely moved again. So this word here is one of being shooken up to the point of when you see somebody weep, when they can't get control of it, when their voice is staggering and they're trying to say something, yet they're so grieved inside that it's shaking something within them. This is what's happening here. Christ is moved with compassion. And what is happening in this scenario? Let me read you a quote about this scene from an individual named Baker. I forget the words. Julian Baker. It says this: Jesus stood in the middle of this Middle Eastern scene of mourners. He heard the cries of pain and loss. He saw tears streaming down despondent faces, and the stench and ugliness of death engulfed him like a nauseous cloud. It must have been a chilling scene in the midst of this dark moment of weeping and sorrow. Jesus felt intense pain swirling around him, and he wept. I believe the pain he felt as he considered death as an entity encompassed the ages. From the beginning to to the end of time. And his heart was engulfed. Now, is he crying because Lazarus is dead? He's about to raise. I say no. He sees here, as a man who is acquainted with our grief and suffering, he has attended a funeral like you have attended a funeral. Like many millions and trillions have attended funerals from the beginning of time to the end of time. That hated enemy of humanity, death, that haunts us, that has made widows grieve and the loss of their husband, and mothers grieve the loss of their newborn, and all of these moments of funeral, beginning to end, Christ is there and he sees this nauseous cloud of grief. Yes, he loves Lazarus. Yes, he loves Mary and Martha, but there's something bigger going on here. So what does he say? Take away the stone, verse 39. Well, you're about to hear the proper response. Martha, the sister of the deceased, replied, Lord, by this time the body will have a bad smell, because he has been buried 4 days, if you haven't heard. 4 days. Decomposition. You want me to roll the stone away? Just wait a minute, Jesus. It's been 4, not 3, not 2, 4 days. I like the King James the best in that. It says, he stinketh. I cannot roll the stone away, for he stinketh. Hallelujah. Did you get the picture? Like he's rotting. It's over. So she resists him. He's already told her, I am the resurrection. And she's still resisting him. Oh Lord, I don't know if you've heard, 4 days. I am the resurrection. I'm the resurrection you were talking about. And I'm here. And I'm telling you to roll the stone away. So she rolls the stone away. Do you think there was a stench? Absolutely. It had been 4 days. That's an awkward funeral. Right? You ever seen somebody just open a casket and just roll the body out and just hit the ground? Like, no. Funerals can be a little awkward, and events like, that can be a little awkward. But now here Jesus is like, yeah, roll away the stone. Ooh, it's been 4 days. Body's decomposing. It's going to reek, man. Reek. It's all bound up in that cave where they bury people. Just all there, just festering. 3-4 days, just heat rising, just... Stone rolls away. That nauseous cloud just enters that entire funeral procession. That's how I do it. Breathe through the mouth. And then looking around like, what is this cat doing? It's just, there's a dead dude in there. What's going on? So the stone rolls away. The nauseous cloud hits the crowd. And everybody, you can imagine, like there's this dark hole of impossibility. People don't raise. It doesn't happen. Like I said, we could explain away the other resurrections, the 2 other ones in the Gospels. And we can't, but we can try. This, you can't. It's 4 days dead. Not only is he 4 days dead, the stone's been rolled away. They all smell the funk. And I can just imagine, like, oh, Lord, look at this guy. What's he got going now? The doubt in the room. Everybody's already blaming him. Now he's jacking up the funeral. It's all your fault. You didn't show up. Where were you? Now roll away. It's too late. I am the resurrection.
Come on.
I am the life.
That's right.
He is the source of all of it.
That's right.
He is the source of light itself.
That's right.
He is the Logos, the Word become flesh. And he's standing there proclaiming, your brother will live again. In the end times, I know he will, Lord. No, I am the resurrection. Take away the stone. Martha said, by this time there is a stench. Because he's been in the grave 4 days. Verse 40, Jesus responded, didn't I tell you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Now she's got to know that something's about to happen. Like, I'm about to see the glory of God if I would believe. So they took away the stone. Jesus looked upward and said, Father, I thank you that you have listened to me. I knew that you always listen to me. But I said this for their sakes, the sake of the crowd standing around here, that they may believe. What is he talking about belief so much? It sounds like that's the opposite of what he's experiencing from Martha, Mary, and everyone at the funeral, is a lack of belief. So why is he pinning it down here? Because of that. Why did Jesus weep? Because they didn't believe. Why did he weep when he looked over Jerusalem? Because they didn't believe. Because they didn't recognize the day of their visitation. Because God is there on the scene and they don't recognize him. They could have known peace, yet they don't know peace because they've rejected him. And he looks over Jerusalem and he weeps. And he weeps at the funeral, I believe, for the same reasons. Yes, there's this idea of funerals from the beginning to the end, but there's also this idea of Jesus walking into a scenario where no one believes in him. The very opposite is being thrown upon his shoulders. It's all your fault. Not only are you not the solution, you're the problem. Be careful in your questioning of God. You may be questioning the solution. I know that you always listen to me. So he says this prayer, but he's doing it for the sake of the crowd. Verse 43, when he had said this, he shouted in a loud voice, Lazarus! Ooh, come on, somebody. There's a few places I'd like to be. This is top 3 right here. All the odds, just be looking at everybody in the crowd. Look at this guy. Well, he's just wait to see his face. This guy's over here nudges like this guy, just Jesus, guy, man, he's messed up the funeral. If he would have showed up, this guy would have been healed. And just the crowd and the onlookers and, oh man, who is this guy? I think he is. But then you hear a voice cut through the crowd, through the whispers, through the doubts, through the blame, through the accusations. The resurrection is speaking. The one who says, let there be light. And he speaks into that dark, cavernous hole of impossibility, of doubt and misery and frustration and blame. And he says, Lazarus, come forth. You can hear his voice cutting that crowd as everybody turns and looks at Jesus and then looks and peers into the hole. What do you mean, come forth? People don't raise. It's not a thing. But he is the resurrection and the life. And then you see some movement in the back of the cave in that darkness. Is that? And then you see a man come out wrapped in grave clothes. It's looking like a mummy. It's all wrapped up. Just out of the back of the cave, just coming out. Just, whoa! What's going on here? I mean, can you imagine? Is this happening? Am I see? Yeah, there's somebody coming out. Powerful moment. So they took away the stone. Jesus looked up and upward and said, Father, I thank you that you always listen to me. He says this prayer. Then he says, Lazarus, come forth, verse 33. The one who had died came out. The one who had died came out. His feet and his hands tied up with strips of cloth and a cloth wrapped around his face. Jesus said to them, unwrap him and let him go. Come on. It's a beautiful moment. It's Jesus. He just had one of the most interesting funerals of all time. The one I want to attend. And Lazarus comes out, bound in grave clothes. And everybody, all eyes on Lazarus. Now do you get why everybody's showing at the Triumphal Entry to see Lazarus? Now do you get why the chief priests want to kill him? Because this monumental moment has happened. He comes out, and this is what I love. God does the resurrecting, but he still uses people in the process. That's right. And this is closing. He asks them to roll the stone away, and they roll the stone away. He could have spoken to the stone. Stone, gone and get. And it would have gone and got. But he says, roll away the stone. What is he doing here? This is this grappling with belief and hope and trusting in God and not blaming him for our problems, but embracing him as the solution. All of this is happening. But he calls people to roll the stone away. And Jesse walks up to the stone and says, Willard, I need your help. Zach, I need your help. And Bowden, the stone's real heavy. I'm going to need your help. And then a guy comes out wrapped in grave clothes. And what does he do? Grave clothes be gone? Poof. No. He says, take and unloose him. Yeah. I call that team challenge. I call a grave a place of impossibility that I could not come back from. With all my anger toward God, my bitterness toward him for the loss of my son, my blame hurled at him, all the while he is the solution. And in that dark impossibility, I saw no hope, where there was no hope, and only God could raise the dead. Only God could speak into that darkness to a broken and lost man. But he asked, he didn't have to, he asked people to help. Then he asked some people to remove grave clothes. You know who that guy was for me, man? It was Orlando Rivera. Orlando Rivera was a little harsh, man, and he would often say things you didn't want to hear, but that you needed to hear. And Orlando Rivera was our dean of men back in 96 and 97, and even came back and worked for a little while, a few years, was here when I came back in 07, having left and gone to Florida for a few years. But that was Orlando Rivera, the guy on the ground that was like friction. He was like iron sharpening iron with me, constantly. The issues of my life and the things that I needed to deal with, confronted by the Word of God. The grave clothes that had bound me and kept me locked up in that dark cave. He said, loose him and let him go. And one by one, grave clothes were removed. I just love this because it shows that God uses people, not that he needs to, but he chooses to. Imperfect, broken people. Those same people in the crowd that don't believe him. You looking for a perfect leader to lead you to the promised land? Well, his name's Jesus. It ain't me. I will fail you every time. I just will. It's who I am. I need grave clothes removed from my life. So listen, men, in our grappling with questions, be careful when talking to God, man. Know that he loves you and he cares for you and he knows. He already knows your struggle, your difficulty. Confide in him. Trust him. Believe in him. Let's bow our heads. God, we love you and we thank you today for your word.